Hey everyone, how you doing today? Audio Jack here, bringing you another quick video on a repair I'm doing, a PV 6505 Plus. We have no sound whatsoever coming from the amp, but if you use the effects return, you're getting sound. So I'm going to show you a quick little test procedure and an easy way to fix it. So if you have a PV, you're not getting any sound out of it, the 6505 head or the 112, this is a combo. I'll show you real quick what to check and how to fix it. Pretty common problem. I do these all the time. Doesn't really take a lot of expertise to do it, but let's get into it and I'll show you what you got to do to fix it. Okay, so the first thing I noticed about this amp is we have no the heater filaments on the preamp tubes aren't working, which led me to know exactly what the problem is. And if you look, apparently this amp, my customer told me, has went through a couple of people, including one tech, and nobody could figure it out. Must not have been very good techs, but and then all the tubes look like they've been replaced, all new rubies. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just pull all the tubes and then all the bottom screws out so we can get the board out, and then I've already taken the front knobs off. So pull all your knobs off, input jack, we want to get this board loose. Then we're going to pull the tubes out, we're going to remove all these screws. Basically we just need to, in order to do it the right way, we need to get the board out, and unfortunately on these Peaveys there's a lot of screws holding the board down because the tube sockets actually mount through. So we may not need to take these ones out. It's been a while since I worked on one, but I know the main, I already took them off for the main 6L6s, the two screws had to come out. So we're gonna go ahead and get the board loose, and I'll show you how to do a quick check and show you what the problem is. Okay, in order to make your life a little bit easier, to get the board out, you're going to remove at least the first three cover retainers, I guess you would call it, off the 12AX7s. I'll zoom out, take those three off, and then you're going to need to take the two hook or the claw retainers off the 6L6s, unplug the send and return on the reverb tank, and then to make your life a little bit easier, just pull the screws out of the bottom. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I believe. Just double check, and it will make life a lot easier to get the actual board out. You can see it's loose now. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to unplug these three wires. Don't worry about taking pictures or writing it down because the board is labeled. And then over here in the corner you have a connector that's got a tiny bit of glue on it. You're going to just squeeze it, pull it straight up, and then the only other thing we're going to disconnect is there's another wire that goes to the output board. It has a little bit of glue on it, but if you just carefully pull up on it, it'll pop right out. And now you can see we have the board loose and ready to come out. No need yet to pull off any of this side. Oh yeah, and one thing I forgot, for the LED, the front light on the amp, if yours has it, you can just pull the wires up out of the hole. That would have been disconnected when you removed the unit from either the cabinet or the head unit. So first thing I noticed when I inspected this amp is I found, let me see if I can't focus in here a little bit better for you. Somebody did a shoddy job and replaced, I believe that's a 4.7 ohm resistor. Don't quote me on that. There should be two that is the same. I think 66 and 67. But as you can see, that's not a quality repair. Somebody didn't want to take the board out. These resistors, if you measure them in circuit, it's going to show 0. They're such a low ohm resistor, but somebody more than likely ran a voltmeter across that in circuit and got a reading of no resistance or something like that, and thought that possibly the resistor was bad, so that for some reason they replaced one. But if you do the bolts underneath, or the screws, like I said, you don't need to pull the top ones out on the board where you can see somebody else already has. They can stay right on there. The first thing I would do is just check your fuses, because there are heater circuit fuses. There's one for the mains voltage. Always start by checking those. Don't just take my word for it, but I've done probably about 10 of these since 2016, and it seems to be like a reoccurring problem that I've seen. But if you let me see if I can get a little bit of light here. If you trace back the circuit for the missing voltage on the 12AX7s, it's going to come to these 4 diodes you're going to see here, and then this one you can actually see next to this capacitor. There's a little bit of burning on the glue that they use to keep the vibrations from damaging the capacitors, but we're going to get into a meter. I'm going to set this up on a tripod so that I stop giving you guys the shakes, and we'll test it. But these diodes here are going to end up being bad for the rectifier. Take note of the direction of them. You'll have 2 that go one way, 2 that go the other way. That's how a rectifier works, and it basically changes the AC voltage into DC voltage, and then there's usually a smoothing cap of such to power our missing voltage for this circuit. So it's a real easy fix once you get the board out with some basic soldering skills, and diodes are cheap. You know, I always keep them in stock, but diodes are super cheap. I'm actually going to put some better ones in here. But yeah, I'll show you how to test them. But first thing you want to do is look, and if your Peavey 6505 lost all of its sound, it's able to play through the return input, then this is going to end up being your problem. So I'm going to set this up on a tripod, and then we're going to test these diodes. Okay, so I tried to set this up the best that I could to show you how to do a quick test, and any cheap multimeter can do this. Basically, we're going to set it to the diode setting, and notice we have a open circuit, and on a good diode you're going to have forward voltage in one direction, and then if we change the leads over to the other direction, you're going to have an open circuit. So basically the diode is switching. Power can flow one way but not the other. Now let's go down to this bad diode here, and when we check it, we have, sorry, let me get the contacts. We have a forward voltage going one way, and then we're going to flip it over. If I can read the contacts from behind the camera. This is very hard to do with, we have a forward voltage the other way. So forward voltage one way, forward voltage the other way. This diode's not functioning. You'll either have to where current can flow in both directions, or you'll have an open circuit in both directions. But either way, quick little test you can run on the diodes. Forward, and again, these ones are really kind of hard to get to. Forward, and then good diodes are forward, no voltage. So we're going to go ahead and replace these 4 diodes. And then one more thing I wanted to show you, see if I can do this without having to pause the video, is when we lift this specific board out of the amp, we flip it over and see if I can focus it right here. I'm not sure if you're actually able to tell, but where those diodes are mounted, you can see some discoloration on the actual board itself. Pretty common with these amps, real easy to fix. We're going to grab a little bit of solder, solder sucker, and then we'll just pull the solder off and replace these 4 diodes. And then I'm also going to fix, you can see on this board where they changed that resistor, and they did a really shoddy job. It's actually separated a little bit. You're probably not going to have that issue if you're trying to fix your amp, but it's a real easy fix. Just follow the steps, pull the board, test the diodes. Diodes are always bad on these if you have no volume, and replace the diodes. You're not going to have to worry about the resistor. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my solder sucker here, and remember, before you get ahead of yourself, that if you don't do a lot of electronics, tube amps can kill you. This amp's been unplugged for a long time. I also have a resistor that I connect across the caps to drain the voltage. Now you can really see the discoloration now that I move my light out of the way. And one of the best ways to, anyways, as I was saying, before I get ahead of myself, there is enough voltage in these tube amps to seriously hurt you or even kill you. So either leave your amp unplugged for a long time, and if you don't feel safe enough to work around higher voltages, maybe just pay somebody to replace them. But always use precautions, especially when you're using or working on these amps. Don't immediately unplug it and then go right into trying to repair it. You got to give it time to discharge and just be safe about it. Never work on it when it's plugged in. So what we need to do is just grab a soldering iron. The easiest way to do this, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see from my angle, but I got to get to it. We're just going to put some fresh solder onto the back of the diode pad. And once we get it heated up, we're going to take our solder sucker. And just like that, you just pulled the solder right off of that diode. We didn't damage the pad at all. And we're going to do that to the rest of the diodes. And before we pull them off the board, you're going to take note of the direction. The diodes will have a line, and they are directional. Very important. The reason for having a diode. So I'm going to go ahead and desolder the rest of these. You can see I've already pulled the solder off here. They'll come out fairly easy on the other side. So I'm going to pull all the solder off. We'll flip it over and I'll show you how to put the new diodes in. Okay, so I got all the diodes out. I kind of wanted to show you, we desoldered it, and then the diodes pretty much fell out the back side, and we still have some nice pads here to solder to. It doesn't look as good, obviously, in the video than it does in person, but it's really not a bad job of removing those. So now on the other side of the board, you can see the little line on the diode marking that shows you which way to put the diodes back in. So I have a whole set, of diodes that I use for these rectifiers. These are actually, the factory ones are 1N003 diodes, if you wanted to just order them and go back. It just seems to be a problem on this circuit. But anyways, I'm going to drop them in, solder them, and then I'm going to show you what they look like soldered. We're going to use a little bit of just some non-corrosive, no clean flux paste. We're going to put a little bit on there. Solder these in, and then I'm going to change that resistor. I won't put that in the video, but we'll change the diodes. We'll put it back together and see if the amp works. Okay, so I'm going to be missing a little clip here. I thought I was recording and I actually wasn't, but I got the diodes, if we can focus, all soldered in. I got the resistor repaired, and then I just went ahead and did the reverse assembly procedure. Plugged everything back into where it went. Screwed down the board, put the front knobs on. So it's as simple as just usually replacing this whole rectifier diode assembly. I'm going to stand it up right now, hook up a dummy load, turn it on, and see if we got the heaters back on the preamp tubes. Okay, I got the dummy load connected. Amp is now turned on and powered, and I've got glowing preamp tubes. So I know myself, normally what I would do is I'd run a sine wave through it and check the output, but I know because I've done enough of these that it is going to work. I'm gonna go ahead and throw the amp back into the cabinet and give it a little go.